from Project 90 by 2030. Mr. Gabriel Klaasen.
Amandla. 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 Hello everyone, my name is Gabriel Klaasen. I'll be presenting on behalf of Project 90 by 2030. Can I please have the presentation on the screen? This one is different from the first time we met. Can someone show me how to use it? A presentation was sent to Mr. Mansami yesterday. It was in the email yesterday, but okay, I can put it in a flash drive if you like. I can find a flash drive, but does this eat into my 7 minutes?
No, it doesn't.
Wait, if I can just send the presentation afterward, that works as well, and I can just orally speak. That also works, right?
Mr. Klaasen, please, would you...
It's not my fault that the presentation is not with them.
I understand.
You know?
I
So
understand.
thanks. So Project 90 by 2030 is a social and environmental justice organization inspiring and mobilizing South African society towards a sustainably developed and equitable low-carbon future. I'd like to highlight the word sustainably developed and the words equitable low-carbon future by means of a just energy transition. A true just energy transition that reflects what a just energy transition by people standards, by equitable standards means. Our main points that we are talking about today in regards to the LTO, I'll go through as we walk. Safety. So the International Atomic Energy Agency identified 15 concerns in the report from 2022. Eskom's safety case report has yet to set out practical and long-term solutions to fix all these concerns. In the IAEA, the IAEA is set to come back to South Africa to assess Koeberg in September 2024. Would it not be advisable to wait for this outcome of this mission before any decision is taken in regards to the lifetime or the long-time operation extension? Many other countries are also looking at extending their lifetime of their nuclear power stations. On comparison with the LTO process in France, where they are dealing with an identical nuclear plant, and France is taking many more precautions and upgrades than South Africa is. France is investing significantly to ensure its plants are close to Generation 3 safety standards as possible. Eskom maintains that Koeberg's Generation 2 design is safe, and the NNR does not question this claim. I'm asking you to please question this claim. Why is it that these precautions are being taken? Are South African lives less important than French lives? Another concerning difference is the difference between France and South Africa is the length of the operation license. While Koeberg is supposed to be extended for 20 years, France is looking for an extending its identical plants for 10 years to prove the safety of the plant is intact before extending for a second time. In addition, France has decreased the intervals between integrated leak tests to 5 years, yet South Africa will keep its 10-year intervals. The last leak test happened 9 years ago, but the next one is only scheduled for later this year, and therefore will be after the NNR has made its decision in regards to the extension. The IAEA put out the recommendation that nuclear plants required 5 defensive layers. Koeberg currently only has 3 layers and an emergency plan to be implemented if radioactive material has exited the plant. In the case of an emergency drill, or in the emergency drill in November 2014, 14 non-compliances with the plan were identified, and in November 2022 emergency drill, the NNR found the results to be adequate, quote unquote. Eskom has yet to provide any evidence that all these issues were addressed. It is important to note that if any non-compliances are found in the United States during an emergency drill, as we heard Mr. Featherston talk about, the US nuclear regulator gives the operator 90 days within which to repeat the drill without non-compliances, failing which the operating license is suspended. So if we're going to make comparisons between the different countries' plants that look similar or work similarly, we need to make sure we recommend and we put in place the safety precautions and the tests that they put in place. It is unknown still how these failures have been addressed. Furthermore, we talk about the health of people. Highlighting it, I would like to mention that the lack of medical bills or lack of medical history does not mean that there is not any medical issues. And so I believe that in order to make sure that the health of people are taken into account, we should look at if there are any medical issues in regards to that. Regarding safe and clean water supplies, we also look at the fact that Cape Town is a water scarce city, and that in the past, day zero almost took us out as a people. The long-term operation extension will require mass amounts of water. In a changing climate, we cannot risk the misuse of the scarce resource. Not to mention the runoff of nuclear waste affecting our aquifers. The evacuation plan. Right now, I still stand in the same place I stood, 33.70 kilometers away from Koeberg Nuclear Station, here in Athlone Community Center. If something were to happen, the 16-kilometer zone is the one that will be protected and safeguarded. Whereas myself, someone from this community, whereas the individuals from the Cape Flats here, which is from Heideveld, from Menenberg, from Khayelitsha, from Gugulethu, Mitchell's Plain, Hanover Park, they will be left out of that evacuation plan. These are communities that have been put into spaces where we find ourselves right now during apartheid, spaces that are very condensed, very close together. And I think if we talk about safety, we need to make sure an evacuation plan is in place to safeguard these very important lives that historically, 40 years ago, when the plant came into life, weren't taken into account. Then furthermore, what do we do with the people? Now, something has happened. Where do we put all of these people in Cape Town? We cannot come back for many years. We cannot drop our jobs. We cannot figure out. So what do? We find that in 2022, after the Durban floods, there are still people displaced. More recently, we've seen on Eastern Cape, just last week, in fact, the floods that devastated people, leaving 9 dead and 2,000 displaced. Something far worse could happen. The waste. If the life extension is granted, 20 more years will be allowed of medium to high level waste will be produced. This will not only affect Koeberg site, but also Falputs, where the low to medium or low to intermediate level waste is currently being stored. The high level waste and having no safe way of disposing of it is a real concern for us. Currently, over 15,000 or 1,500, tons of high-level waste is stored at Koeberg, either in temporary cooling ponds.
1 minute.
Either in temporary cooling ponds. Long story short, 20 more years of waste means 60 years of waste for communities in the Northern Cape to deal with. Falputs, being a chosen dump site, was done during apartheid. 40 years later, black and brown communities are still suffering because of this. The presentation that I will make sure that every single one of you get into your inbox, and I'll follow up with you, Mr. Mansami, regarding that, will have quotes from those Northern Cape individuals. Meaningful public participation, or at least it should be. South Africa is a richly diverse country. Confronted with poverty and a lack of access to resources, we should look at making sure that women, children, people with disabilities, and youth are properly informed when it comes to this. Furthermore, the Constitution calls for public participation. We see this through the approach of South Africa's constitutional democracy, which upholds a representative and a participatory democracy, where the members of the parliament represent the views of the electorate, whilst in a participatory democracy, the public is actively involved in decision-making. That is why it's so important that we get every single bit of information. We heard that it will take about a month to do a presentation on some of these documents. I don't have a single degree. I work at this organization because they took me in after high school. It will take me far more than a month. Unfortunately, we aren't seeing that this is properly being done, with documents only having been released as maybe within just over a month ago. 1,000-page document that I have to now go and figure out how to understand. I'll skip a few things and get to the end, basically. Basically, my essence of what I'm here to say is that we aren't being properly engaged as civil society. The Northern Cape has just been added to the list, to the roster. If we acknowledge that their voices are important, then we need to acknowledge that they deserve too, at least another round of hearings, so that they can be meaningfully and fully engaged in this public participation process. If we acknowledge that, then we need to make sure that they are involved. Furthermore, people need to be involved. If we genuinely talk about caring about people, safety, protecting people, property, and the environment, then the people need to know what's going on. Lastly, before I close, is on the website, when I did my presentation in February, I noted that there were 159 days, 11 hours, 26 minutes, and 35 seconds at the time I took my screenshot that was being published on Eskom's website. Yesterday, I took a screenshot. 44 days, 6 hours, 58 minutes, and 8 seconds. They still are pushing forward with this idea that countdown to license extension, as though to say that you guys don't actually have a voice. Well, we're having this hearing with you, but we're still going to do it. That's why the countdown's there, you know? So let us make proper decisions as civil society, as people, when it comes to this. Lastly, the reality is that you are an independent body, despite what anyone says. You will make your decision and we will live with it, or we won't live with it and we'll figure a way around it. But you have the opportunity as an independent body to set the rights from the past, or to set rights proper from the past's wrongs. You have the ability to reflect the decisions that are based in reality and in fact. You have an opportunity to make it clear to South Africa, the people in South Africa, that you were not captured like many other groups and entities, especially 30 years into our democracy, and that you are able to make decisions that take into account their best interests. Power to the people. The people got the power. Tell me, can you hear it? Getting stronger by the hour.